All right. We are live and welcome to the November meeting of the Citizens Advisory Board for the Clean and Renewable Action Plan. I want to thank everybody for being here and taking time out of your busy day to join us. We are live streaming, so remember to mute unless you're talking, and remember to unmute when you start talking. That's always the fun part of it. I want to say thank you first. We've got a great program today. It's going to be the regular meeting, and then we're going to go and have a educational session right after that. And we've got 3 people from our CAB group that are going to be presenting. We want to say a thank you to Tawana Maddox of Athens Land Trust, to Margot Fowler. I'm sorry, it took me a second. Margot Fowler with Action Incorporated, and Melinda Lord with Athens-Clarke County. We want to thank each of you for taking time to prepare for this and to join us and to share your knowledge and expertise on our educational section, which will follow right after. So without any more from me, thank you and welcome, and I will turn it over to South Face to lead us through.
Hey, can everyone hear me? All right. Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Mike, for going ahead and going through the logistics around the public meeting. I'll go ahead and ask everyone who's not speaking can go ahead and place themselves on mute. Hearing a little bit background noise. Right, so welcome, CAB members. We're very glad you're here. We're going to go ahead and move forward with our usual roll call here. So we'll just very quickly go through just name and the organization you're representing here today in your capacity as a CAB member. So we'll start with the CAB members and then end with the Clean Energy Project team from us in the county. So go ahead, CAB members.
I'm Tom Lawrence, the University of Georgia, but I'm representing the Athens Green Building Council, and I'm trying to turn on my AirPods.
Tom Maddox, Athens Land Trust.
Amy Cassane, WNA Engineering.
Newland with Joma Construction, representing the Athens Area Home Builders Association.
Lisa Gotro, Action Incorporated.
Charlie Glodanis, Athens Housing Authority.
Right. Is there anybody on the phone that hasn't identified themselves? All right. And Lisa, I see your note that one of your colleagues will be joining shortly as well. So we'll stay on the lookout for her. All right.
I believe she is on, unless there's another Stephanie.
I'm on.
Okay. Oh, hey, Stephanie.
Hey.
All right. So then from the South Face team, you've got me. I'm Megan O'Neill, a program manager for policy and sustainability services. I'm here with my colleague, Alex.
Hey, y'all. Alex Trachtenberg with South Face.
As well as my colleague, Bailey.
Hi, Bailey Shea, South Face Policy.
Do I have any other colleagues on here? Okay, I didn't think so. And let's hand it over to Mike, your team.
Okay, I'm Mike Wharton with the Sustainability Office. Maggie, you're next.
Songster, and I'm Maggie Songster with the Office of Sustainability.
I'm Crystal Coburn with the Inclusion Office.
I'm Ilka McConnell with Economic Development.
Melinda Lord with Housing and Community Development.
Great. I think I left one person on our team off who's representing GreenLink Analytics today. Yo?
Hi, I'm Yo Renchi. Please feel free to call me Yo. I'm with GreenLink Analytics as their Director of Urban Initiatives. Hi, guys.
Great. Is there anyone else on here that hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves yet? All right, great. Let's dig on in here. So today our plan is to review our October CAB meeting and more importantly, learn from the subject matter experts Mike identified at the top of this meeting. This is, as our last few CAB meetings have been, a combination of a project status update, a discussion, as well as an education session. Today's education session is on energy burden and housing inequality. And as that's a very complex topic that I think is of interest to a lot of the people joining today, we want to make sure to allow a full 90 minutes to really dig into that. So I'm going to try to go through this early content at a somewhat rapid pace. I want to allow time for questions if needed, but I'd really like us to go ahead and get started on the housing topic by 2:30. So I wanted to go ahead and make everyone mindful of that up top. We can always follow up after this meeting for further discussion on any of the issues we're touching on early in this meeting if needed. So thank you everyone for your participation.
And Megan, I did fail to introduce Stephanie Nesbitt, who's from Action, who's also going to join us for the educational session. So thank you, Stephanie, for your contribution as well.
Yes, thanks, Mike and Stephanie. All right, so here is our agenda. You'll see the first few minutes are recapping last month and talking about stakeholders' development updates. And then we're digging into education. So last month, we introduced the survey results that we got from you guys on the education series, as well as stakeholder engagement process to map out a pathway forward. And since our last CAB meeting, we had an early November session on energy systems and grid policy that my colleague Lisa Bianchi-Fossati, as well as Matt Cox from GreenLink Group, led up. That session will be recorded and made available on the Athens website. But I just want to flag, it's not up yet, but it's coming. I might have authorized Twana to do something to my screen, so let me know if things are looking funny. In addition to that, we went through your stakeholder feedback from the last CAB meeting and some subsequent follow-up, and we have been making a series of additional updates to the Community Clean Energy Survey. Recapping, this is our education series. Today, we're wrapping up between today and December with our energy burden and housing inequality session. And we had that rescheduled session for December 9th that was intended to be about greenscaping, which we initially planned to get to on October 21st. Because the next CAB meeting we have coming up in mid-December is going to be a bit of a year in review and look ahead, we thought it could be a good opportunity to, instead of having that standalone greenscaping session on December 9th, to just go ahead and fold it into the already scheduled December 16th CAB meeting. So what do you guys think of that idea of, instead of having this standalone session on the 9th, that we just combine it with the CAB meeting on the 16th? Any objections? All right, thanks. Right, so with regard to the Community Clean Energy Survey, I want to acknowledge that in our last meeting, we told you it would be forthcoming, and it still is, but forthcoming this week instead of a few weeks ago. So we very much apologize for the delay there. We had some additional revisions on our end that we wanted to make just to ensure integrity of the survey, but rest assured that's coming your way this week, and we plan to roll it out in 2021. So next up, we're going to just review the stakeholder feedback we received and the process we've mapped out for moving forward. So this slide recaps the feedback we got on the one-on-ones and the introduction of this mini charrette concept that came up in our last CAB meeting, which we thought was a really fantastic idea for some of these groups. We'll send this list out after the meeting. For the time being, this is just laying out where we've landed. There is the second bullet you'll see on the right is that there may, after we conduct these small mini charrettes or one-on-one meetings, there may be a need to conduct additional ones. And we're definitely open to that as we're moving forward. This is an iterative process, and we'll continue to collaborate with you as we make those decisions. In terms of process for the charrettes, what we want to do is to open these up for participation across groups, but we do want these to be very subject matter specific. So what we have decided to do is for these 3 stakeholder charrettes, which by way of reminder is these kind of small group, optimum number of attendees, about 15 to 25 people participating, to have focused discussions on specific topics. And the 3 topics identified are community and equity, clean energy economy, and the intersection of the natural and built environment. And we want to ensure that the subject matter experts within those groups are able to attend. So what we've decided would be the best approach. I know you saw the 3 or 4 slides outlining dozens upon dozens of attendees across these different sectors. So what we're going to do is identify dates for each of these, send out invitations to the attendees within the subject matter list based on the RSVPs that we get. We'll then open up the additional spaces to other people across the different groups that might have interest in attending. So that way we can ensure we're getting our subject matter invitees there if they're available and interested in participating, but also allowing space for people from some of these other groups to participate if they think it would be of interest to them. And because I'm going to flag for the 3rd full bullet you'll see here, each charrette is going to include 1 to 4 CAB members. And Mike, can you go into the rationale for that? Because I know it's a bit of a housekeeping matter.
Well, we were discussing during our planning on how to best get the most free flow of information and have people share thoughts. And if we have more than 4 CAB members at any particular meeting, we are required as open records under this kind of video format to record it. And we felt like that would probably hinder some of the discussion and make it less free-flowing, and people might feel a little more reserved in sharing their opinion. So while we will take copious notes and make all of that available to folks to summarize it, we felt like in a way of keeping it more open, a more open and free exchange of information, thoughts, and ideas, that we would not go the public meeting route, and for these particular ones we would go it's more of a traditional format for interactions. This is what would normally have happened if we didn't go online, just the restrictions that come with open records and going online. So we're not trying to sidestep those, but we really are very sensitive to the fact that we want a lot of feedback, and people feel a lot more free to express themselves if they don't feel like they're being recorded for posterity, and anything they say is forever reviewable. So that's why we went to that. It is a question of which route do we take, and we felt like this would be the best one for the most free flow and get the best information back from everybody.
Thanks, Mike. And I'll flag that we mapped out this 2 kind of parallel processes of this charrette, but also doing these broader town hall style meetings, and those will be recorded. Those will be large scale events. And so that will open up a lot of access to this. For these smaller charrettes, we'll be taking very detailed notes, but we won't be attributing the things we hear to individuals or organizations. We'll just be outlining this is what was discussed, but that way it will allow additional candor and anonymity for the participants in terms of what was said. We'll obviously identify who is invited. So then in terms of identifying those 1 to 4 CAB members for participation, what we're going to do is send around another very short survey to you guys to ascertain which of these 3 you'd be interested in participating in. But there's also a 4th option, because it may make better sense to you to, rather than participate in these charrettes, to be an active participant in these larger scale community meetings. And so if that's the case, we're just going to create a 4th option that allows you to indicate that instead. So yes, so be on the lookout for that survey. If it looks like we're lacking in attendees, we'll reach out and let you guys know. So then documents that will be coming your way are just for information only, no action required on your part, the description of the charrettes that we'll be sending out to invitees, as well as the list of proposed invitees. And now, wow, we breezed through a little bit fast into the education series, part 3 panel, energy burden and housing inequality. And I believe I may have seen a message from Bailey asking if I can run these slides. Is that accurate, Bailey?
Yes. Yeah, if you can, that'd be great, and help me out in that way I can take copious notes.
Yes, give me just a moment to open up this second deck.
Thanks, y'all, for bearing with us.
And you'll see a new South face here today. Alex Trachtenberg, he can give a better introduction for himself about his background and expertise, but due to his impressive background and expertise in this specific topic, we wanted to make sure we brought in the big guns to present out on this. So I will go ahead and tee this up for Alex. And Alex, just tell me when I need to switch some slides. Oh, and I am sharing and not presenting. There we go.
Okay. Hey, everyone. It's good to be here. Glad to be a part of the team working on this clean energy plan with so many great community organizations and leaders and folks within Athens-Clarke County government. Here's our agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about housing in Athens, thanks to our local partners for all the helpful information and data they help to provide to us in generating this presentation and educational session for y'all. We'll talk about the connections between clean energy, think of energy efficiency, solar, things of that nature, and its relationship with housing, particularly from an affordable housing perspective. And then we'll have a great panel discussion as well. So I'm going to try and go not too quick, but quickly enough that we have plenty of time for y'all to hear from our great local panelists and your fellow CAB members. You can go to the next slide.
All right. So this is the next one.
Here's our team. This is a partnership between Southface, GreenLink, and some great local organizations that y'all are familiar with, I'm sure. Athens Land Trust, Action Inc., and of course, Athens-Clarke County government. You've met us all already, and some more than others. I'm a new face, so I'm Alex Trachtenberg again. I work on our policy and community impact teams at Southface here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a senior project manager. And I largely work at the intersection of community development, resiliency, and sustainability. Do a lot of work directly with communities, neighborhoods, and organizations, as well as policy and decision makers to help facilitate a healthier, more resilient, sustainable quality of life for everyone. You can go to the next slide if you'd like. All right. Data. We all love data, right? Lots of statistics here. We got a lot of this from the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, or GIC, report for Athens from 2019. So thanks to Melinda Lord and Athens-Clarke and the community development team for sharing that, and everyone who participated in generating that fabulous report. A little bit about Athens. Y'all probably know about this already, but going to share it for those who may not. It's a pretty even split of single family traditional housing as well as multifamily, as you see, ranging from 2 to 20 plus units, as well as some mobile or manufactured homes. There's about 14,000 multifamily units. In terms of how this compares with the state of Georgia, there's about half as many housing units per capita in Athens as there are in the state of Georgia, just for a comparison. So there is a bit of a shortage of housing here in Athens-Clarke County, and particularly on the affordable side, as we'll get into further. There's certainly some competition with students in that regard, as well as population growth. And in looking at this last statistic here at the bottom, we'll see there's unequal population growth compared with housing growth. We have 7% population growth over a 7-year period from 2010 to 2017, and only a 2% housing growth during that same period. There are a lot of renters in Athens. Again, some of this is influenced by University of Georgia, but it's also influenced by income and what people can afford, and if people can afford to purchase a home or not. The median value is about $150,000, but the average sales price for all home types can range from over $200,000 to over $330,000. Over about a 20-year period, that was a 72% increase, so quite significant. You can move on to the next slide, please. With housing affordability, it's complex. There's a lot of relationships, a lot of intersections. We at Southface and others like to take a comprehensive and holistic approach and view to this, and in something we are talking about as total affordability. So inclusive of all the things that come before us, right? Our health, our comfort, resource and location efficiency, so thinking about energy and water and transportation costs, and how that all relates to our budget as well as our income. Generally, and you all probably know this, there's the 30% rule, right? We shouldn't spend any more than 30% of our income on housing costs, and that's inclusive of utility expenses. So again, this is an opportunity for us to bring down those utility expenses as energy-related expenses and costs, water, et cetera, to make sure we have the most affordable home as possible. There are more than 10,000 families that are below the low-income threshold in Athens of $46,400. And you'll see this here on the graphic on the right. There are 70% of renters that are earning under $35,000. Over a 6-year period recently, from 2012 to 2018, rent increased by 23%. 50% of Athens renters are cost burdened. That is 8% higher than the state of Georgia for a comparison. When things get really bad, you're severely cost burdened. That's where your housing related costs are greater than 50% of your income. There's a high demand for affordable housing in Athens, as you all know. I know we have somebody from the Housing Authority on this call, so they certainly know that very well as you other local housers and housing providers. From a snapshot in December 2018, there were more than 2,700 people on the wait list for the Housing Authority and an affordable home. Additionally, as we think about this further and from a total affordability perspective, there's a general 45% threshold for housing plus transportation costs. Transportation expenses are high in Athens, as well as housing. When you combine those two, we're at 58% on average. So if you take that and apply that to the greater than 50% rule, there's a severe cost burden for Athenians when including housing and transportation costs. And think about all the other things that we have to pay for in our daily lives, right? You can go on to the next slide, please. So again, it's complicated. There's a lot of influencing factors that come into housing affordability that create barriers as well as opportunities for more affordable housing and more efficient housing and cleaner and healthier and more comfortable housing in Athens. There's a graphic here from that same GIC report that I mentioned before about all the supply side and demand side influences and the related barriers. Cost of construction is a barrier. The average cost of construction has increased by nearly 2/3, 64% over nearly a 20-year period. We don't have enough supply to meet the demand. The vast majority of multifamily housing that's being constructed is new student-oriented housing. That's over 2/3 of the new multifamily housing. Upfront capital and flexible cash to pay for improvements in homes is limited. There's limited programming. There's some great work being done by some local organizations to help fill those gaps, but we know the need is greater than what we currently have. So we need to be creative. Innovation, buzzword, right? But we do need to be innovative. We need to be creative. We need to think about rebates, incentives, innovative financing related to energy and energy efficiency and clean energy. There's something called PAYS, a pay-as-you-save program, as an example, as well as building upon what utilities and local government are already doing, providing more rebates and incentives, making sure that it's targeted to and focused on the needs of affordable housing renters, as well as lower income homeowners, and that we're providing the right mixture of rebate and incentive style programs from the utility, from the government. There's a split incentive. Who pays benefits in a lot of cases? So for renters, there's a lot of split incentives where if your landlord, your building owner makes an improvement at the property, those benefits may or may not accrue to you directly. If you're paying the electric or the energy or utility bill, then you are going to get some of those direct savings and benefits, but it's not always going to accrue equitably. So you have to place a fine lens on that as well. There's also some differences between, I think we all know this, between different layers and levels of government. So between what the federal government, state government, and local government does with local needs varies. An example of this is the Weatherization Assistance Program, and something we actually just discussed the other day. If you make an improvement on a multifamily home for weatherization, there's a 12-month rent restriction period. But after those 12 months, the owner could theoretically increase that rent. So with that added value, the improvement to the building, they could increase that rent. Is that a local policy opportunity to make sure that we're protecting residents, especially lower income and lower wealth residents, as much as possible, and our legacy residents in Athens? Living wage employment, right? We know wages are flat. A living wage is hard to make for a lot of people in Athens. In order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Athens-Clarke County, you would need to work 90 hours per week at minimum wage. I can't fathom working 90 hours. Just think about that as some added context. You can go to the next slide, please. Opportunities, all right. Optimism, positivity, right? There's a lot of great opportunities out there. There's some great best practices, some examples. Again, the Finding Home GIC report, the work that local organizations and community leaders and members like yourselves are doing are going to make this better for Athenians and those that live in Athens-Clarke County, right? So these are some opportunities, right? Just some highlights. A housing trust fund. We got to be able to pay for the reduction in rent, right? With affordable housing, you're reducing the rent to make it affordable compared to what a market rent is. You've got to fill that gap. Construction's expensive. Living wages are down. Population is increasing. We need resources. We've got to layer these resources together. There's a national housing trust fund that's administered on the state level by the Department of Community Affairs, along with other affordable housing programs like a low-income housing tax credit program, as well as home dollars, CDBG, et cetera. We got to combine these things as best as we can to make sure that we're providing for affordable housing in Athens. There's something you may have heard of. We have it in Atlanta. It's actually present in a lot of jurisdictions across the country now. Something that's called either inclusionary zoning or inclusionary development. This is where it's required as a part of the zoning code that any new multifamily construction or new apartment development has a set aside of those units to be affordable for a certain income level. So a certain percentage of units will be set aside out of that new construction for that apartment building for affordable rents for those that qualify and are eligible. We can look at redevelopment efforts, right? Look at existing land. Look at what the Athens Land Trust is doing. A lot of great things with a land banking land trust program. And look at our available community assets and how can we redevelop them for the needs today and in the future. You certainly have to enforce code. That's something that everybody struggles with, no doubt. But we have to know what the issues are. What's the baseline? What are the conditions on the ground? What do we really need to improve in terms of rehabilitation and rehab retrofits for housing? And most critical is that we have to make sure that Athens, I think you all agree with this, is a place for everyone, for all backgrounds, all types of people, and that we're making sure that those who have been here, who have invested their time, raised their families here in Athens and in Clarke County, aren't displaced. So we need anti-displacement measures that protect legacy residents. You can go on to the next slide. Again, on that intersectionality, right? It's becoming, it is important and becoming so much more important in our world and our communities today. And the point to drive home here is that energy efficiency and clean energy is healthy housing. Health and resource efficiency go hand in hand. When you improve a building or a home with improved insulation, air sealing, improving the ventilation, the HVAC in the home, that provides a higher indoor air quality and improves the indoor environmental quality of that home, such that any kind of pre-existing health conditions or conditions that might be developing are mitigated. So we don't have our children, our loved ones, our elders, our seniors having to go repeatedly back to the emergency room for asthma or respiratory illnesses, for example, rather than addressing that issue head on in the home where we spend so much of our time. Think about, especially now, right? We're all at home all the time right now. So this is really critical these days, and will be going forward, and already was. We really got to make sure we have as healthy of an environment as possible. There are this is some data from the Athens Wellbeing Project that y'all may be familiar with. You see the logo here. Approximately 17% of households report at least one individual in their household with asthma. These are comparable to rates in Georgia and across the United States. About 9% of the county population reports mold problems in the home. How are we ensuring that there's not too much moisture, humidity in the environment in the home? There isn't water infiltrating through any leaks in the plumbing or in the building envelope and the structure of the home, such that we're providing a very healthy and comfortable living environment. And those that do report a presence of mold are 11% more likely to report an incidence or an occurrence of asthma in their household. And I think now we have Yo with Greenlink coming up.
Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate that. And really appreciate the information. I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about as far as energy burden goes in Athens really resonate with some of the points you made about burdens and intersectionality. So right now, I'm just going to give a quick overview of what energy burden looks like in Athens. And just as a quick refresher, energy burden is the amount of yearly income that residents pay for electricity and gas bills combined. So across the country, when you look at national averages, it's about 3% of what people pay for their yearly income. So for example, if a household was paying about $1,500 for utility bills across a year and they have a $50,000 income, they have a utility burden of about 3%, and that's average. If people are paying more than 3% and get to that 6% mark, that is considered high energy burden. But if they are paying 10% or more for their utility bills for electricity and gas, that is considered severe energy burden. So you put that on top of some of the housing and transportation burdens that Alex mentioned, those burdens add up very quickly, and you can easily see half of somebody's paycheck just going towards paying bills. For the median energy burden here in Georgia, more locally, most Georgians pay about 5% of their annual income towards utility bills for electricity and gas. Athens-Clarke County is a bit higher. On average, the median is about 7%. And I'm sorry, there seems to be little boxes that just went away over the map. Perfect. It looks like it's showing again. So this energy burden map to the right-hand side is actual map of Athens energy burden. You can see that the areas in green are at or below the national energy burden of about 3%. However, the areas in purple or darker purple have much higher levels of energy burden. That central focal point right in the middle is the area with the highest energy burdens in the entire city, around 30%, which is incredibly high, but my understanding is that also has very high concentrations of students who might be skewing the data a bit, whereas the areas around that central point has a lot of energy burden around that 6 to 10% mark between high and severe energy burden. We can dive a little bit more into that in the future. If we could go to the next slide, Megan. Thank you. I want to talk just a bit about the impacts of having a high energy burden beyond just climate and energy itself. One thing that we found through a study through FDIC is that the #1 reason that people get a payday loan across the country is in fact to pay a utility bill. So when you think of high interest rates and potentially predatory lending, you can really see how paying utility bills can hit people's wallets and put them in a worse financial situation in the future. Another national study found that about 31% of Americans have gone without a meal or a prescription in order to pay a utility bill, which is quite a high number to begin with. But think about the fact that energy burden has actually been exacerbated by COVID-19 due to higher energy use in homes as people are working from homes or schooling from homes. Plus, there are a lot of folks who have more impacted incomes, loss of revenue, which has really exacerbated that energy burden level. And in particular, the graphic to the right really shows you a cycle of energy burden that can be really reinforcing, particularly for low-income families who tend to already live in less efficient and older housing stock. And because of that less efficient and older housing stock, they already have higher energy bills. And again, these things can be exacerbated by climate change, hotter summers, colder winters, and potentially increasing utility rates. And that in turn feeds into higher energy bills, and that might force them into getting short-term loans, which reinforces the cycle of being in low income and potentially really vulnerable to these impacts. So the good news is that residential energy efficiency and solar really can actually reduce energy burden. It can help increase home comfort, create jobs, and stimulate the economy. We do definitely see lots of potential for this to happen in Athens, and I believe the next slide is actually Alex talking about some potential solutions to that.
Thanks, Joe. So here are some opportunities for clean energy in housing. You may have seen this central graphic, the pyramid here in a prior education session, kind of getting at the building blocks of clean energy. You have to start with conservation, then go to energy efficiency well before you even consider doing solar, right? You need to make sure that your demand, the load that you need to power all the different things in your home or your building are as efficient as possible first. So some of the ways that this happens, and this is a bit of a progression here in terms of the bulleted list. So your baseline is really, are you complying with the state energy code or your local jurisdiction's energy code? That's really the baseline thing, right? What a green building program does is goes above that code. It sets targets and goals for percentage increases, if you will, via energy and water conservation measures, different things, higher value insulation, higher efficiency HVAC systems, all that kind of stuff, right? To make sure that you're saving as much as possible. Typically, these might have a little bit more of a premium on the front end, or it's net. There's no difference. And you'll at least make up this money throughout the operational period, throughout the time period that you're living in that home or that building. There's also some low and no cost things that you can do. Think about like what your grandmother told you when you're at home, that your mother might have told you, don't block the air vent with your couch. Pretty basic, right? You leave the room, turn off the light switch, put in a door sweep, put in weather stripping, make sure your windows and any gaps and cracks in your house are caulked with caulk, are air sealed if necessary. All these things add up. All these different gaps and cracks in the home, and you'll see this image here, this graphic on the far right, common air leaks, escaping out of the home, right? All that air that you pay to heat or cool, whether it's in the winter or in the summer, that you're paying good money for is escaping the building or the house. You want to keep that inside, right? You also don't want to let additional contaminants or pollutants or things into the house as well from a health and comfort perspective too. So when you add all those up, it could be like the door is just wide open. All the gaps and cracks could be just like leaving that front door open. Weatherization is something that's been around for a long time, has a good cost benefit in terms of the investment that's made. We'll hear a little bit more about that later on from Action Inc. and in the local panel. But these are going a little bit deeper, right? Improving the insulation in the home, doing air sealing, maybe tuning up the HVAC system a bit, maybe not replacing it, but dealing with the hot water as well. And a variety of those kinds of energy, mostly energy conservation measures, but some have an impact on water as well, of course, with hot water. There's utility programs that can help us to go even deeper, right? So think about kind of layering and stacking these things on top of each other. Different efficiency programs that will operate from kind of a whole home or a whole house approach, where you're taking a savings from a baseline to say, okay, if you've heard of energy benchmarking before, you can't manage what you don't measure kind of thing, to understand how much are we consuming, what are the opportunities for saving, and there are programs that will kind of operate in that regard to achieve a targeted 20%, 25, 30% on your baseline, as well as individual measures. And those can be a deeper retrofit. And these are the things that you want to do before going towards solar or renewable energy. You want to make sure you've managed those costs and those consumptions as much as possible first. There's a link here for later to learn more about the 10 tips and tricks from one of our partners at Georgia Watch. And I think that does it for me.
Thanks, Alex. So that was great. And I just, as a as someone who's helping put these slides together and organize the speakers, I just want to thank Yo and Alex and Megan really for really hearing me on the my request for them to stay conscious of time, because I think we're good on schedule and our speakers are going to have plenty of time to talk, and we'll have plenty of time for a Q&A. So thank you guys both. So I'm Bailey Shea. I'm speaking now, just to kind of turn it over. And I know Alex is going to have to hop off the call a little bit early today. So we hope he can stay along for some of the Q&A, but might not be here for all of it. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to our three speakers, or our three speakers in addition to Yo, our three local panelists. So first we want to hear from Melinda Lord, who's been attending these CAB meetings and been engaged. Melinda's works at the Athens-Clarke County in Athens-Clarke County government in the Housing and Community Development, or HCD, department. So Melinda, I'll let you introduce yourself and turn it over and tell us about what HCD does, and what you guys are seeing in the community right now as it relates to affordability and clean energy and housing inequality. Melinda?
It helps if you unmute.
Great.
Thank you, Bailey, and thanks to everyone for this opportunity to provide information and to speak on this subject today. My name is Melinda Lord, and I am with the Athens-Clarke County Housing and Community Development Department. HCD, as we refer to it, receives U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership Grant, Continuum of Care Grant, and CDBG CV COVID federal grant funding, and then allocates it to eligible local entities, mostly nonprofits, in support of qualifying affordable housing, economic development, public services, and public facilities, public infrastructure projects. HCD is the only department whose primary emphasis of service and funding is targeted specifically toward the low to moderate income population in Athens-Clarke County. Affordable housing activities primarily include acquisition of property and demolition for future affordable housing development, homeowner occupied rehabilitation, historic preservation, and support of home-funded new construction and rehabilitation of existing unit activities for the development of affordable home buyer and rental housing units. Housing counseling services are also funded to support affordable housing projects throughout the county, including housing referral services and home buyer training courses. All rehabilitation and new construction activities encourage energy efficient materials, supplies, and appliance usage. New construction strongly encourages environmentally friendly green building practices and the installation of energy efficient appliances. Many public services Many public services and continuum of care activities are targeted toward the Athens homeless populations, including shelter services and permanent supportive housing programs. Other funded public services programs support youth education, job training, and healthcare programs. New community development block grant funding has recently been awarded to HCD by HUD and is directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. CDBG CV funding, as it's named, will be dedicated to public services activities with priority funding for financial assistance activities, including rent, mortgage, and utility payments, and also homeless services support activities. The Athens-Clarke County government also received CARES Act federal funding, and the mayor and commission allocated a large portion of those dollars to nonprofit agencies for financial assistance activities. The administration of this specific county grant funding is conducted by HCD, and currently funded CARES Act recipients providing financial assistance include Athens Land Trust, Action Inc., the ARC, East Athens Development Corporation, Athens Area Habitat for Humanity, and Casa de Amistad. In essence, the Athens-Clarke County Housing and Community Development Department does not conduct activities internally. Instead, we administer annual grants to local agency experts, therefore providing financial support for a broad range of vital program services aimed toward assisting the greatest number of our most vulnerable and impoverished community members each year.
Thanks, Melinda. That was great, and a good overview of one of the many layers of programs at the local level that support affordable housing. So thank you. Can you go to the next slide, Megan, so I can remember who is next and introduce them? There we go. Action Inc. So I'm going to let Margot take over much of the introduction for Action Inc. Because they do so much. And I believe I know we have three folks on the call from Action: Lisa, Margot, and Stephanie. And so I'm going to, I think, turn it over to Margot Fowler. We also have Stephanie Nesbitt and Lisa on the call as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Margot to explain all that Action does to break the cycles of poverty within Athens and support folks in their energy burden and to achieve affordable housing. So Margot, take it away.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys and share information about Action. I'm having internet instability, so if I freeze or you can't understand me, then you need to let me know so I can pause for a second. So I apologize if that happens. So Action, we're a private nonprofit agency who offers a hands-up approach for individuals in the community and families through either short-term or long-term goals that they may have. We have community-based programs as well as educational-based programs. And so our focus is developing on partnerships as well as creating opportunities for education and providing a variety of services. So we have several educational-based training programs that deal with all different types or populations, all different types of populations. So with our education program, we have what we consider like career coaches that provide mentorship and guidance and services to the individuals who are going through an education program, whether that's in high school with our high school youth program, partnering with the high school students, helping them not only graduate from high school, but either choose to go to college or the military or some type of employment prospect. And so with our our high school youth program, we have career coaches within our 10 counties, plus there's a few additional outside counties as well that provide this service. We have our Opportunities to Excel program, which is another education-based program that works with seniors who are about to graduate high school, as well as transition into post-secondary education. So a lot of times they do not have like support that they need in order to make that transition as smooth as possible. Maybe parents didn't attend college or different types of reasons that they may lack support. So our career coach is able to work with them in order to not only make sure that they're graduating, but from high school, but also like graduate from college. We have our Achieving Career Excellence program, which we refer to as ACE, that deals with special populations. They're working with them on either GED or short-term certificate training so that they can transition into gainful employment. It could be anyone from like recovering from substance abuse or veterans, ex-offenders, to all types of individuals there. We have our Educational Reentry program, which we sometimes refer to as out-of-school youth. And those are that career coach is working with students typically 16 to 24 who may have dropped out of high school and are wanting to earn their GED. And then we also have our Opportunities Now programs, and that's for adults who are looking to gain additional education, whether it's long-term or short-term. We've had some go through the program that's earned, a certificate, some who's earned up to a master's degree. So with all the educational programs that we provide, the main goal, of course, is higher education, which will result to gainful employment, which will ultimately result to sustainability. Then we have our community-based programs, which we have community service centers in like our 10 counties, including Athens. And with the community service programs, we provide a lot of different services towards employment support, as well as help with rent, utilities, mortgage. We have nutrition programs as well within those. The community service centers try to work with individuals and families on budget counseling as well, so that hopefully they can take some of the information that we're able to share with them and apply it to their lives in order to reduce their expenses. And then hopefully with the employment services, they're able to at least learn how to search for gainful employment, and then are sometimes referred to educational programs so that they can secure gainful employment. Then we also have our HUD certified counselor who provides additional counseling for individuals who are receiving services. That could be mortgage counseling, renters counseling, different types of counseling, so that hopefully once they receive the information, they're able to maintain housing or secure housing. Sometimes it's first-time home buyers information as well. And then we also have our Full Plate program, which is a food rescue program that's primarily in Clarke County. They're picking up excess food from restaurants and caterers and different partners and delivering it to those to the sites that feed like the homeless and different populations, so that food is not wasted. And then last but not least, which is what Stephanie Nesbitt is going to be talking to you guys about, is our weatherization program, which is a low-income, energy-efficient program. And so, Stephanie, if you want to add some additional information, that would be the time.
Thank you, Margot. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, our weatherization program is there to reduce your energy burdens. It's primarily a program for the elderly and persons with young children in the home. We do that by coming in and inspecting your home using a computer-generated software that helps tell us what your house needs to make it more energy efficient. And once we get that, we send out contractors to actually do the work, and then we come back in and re-inspect the homes to make sure that the things that the computer said were done and were done correctly, and we're meeting the goals of the program. Most of the goals are to reduce your energy burden by at least 30%. So in Clarke County, we average about 5 homes a year. We do improve the lives of a lot of people, and that's about as far as I can go.
Thanks, Stephanie. It's good. Anything else from Action? I know we have Lisa on the phone, and just want to, I can't see you because of the way my computer's set up, so I don't want to change Action before we move on. Alrighty. Thank you guys. So yeah, really great to hear from Action. We'll get into it more in the Q&A, but what I've really learned from learning from you guys over the past week or so preparing for this is the diversity of programs that Action and organizations like yours layer together with the ultimate goal of breaking the cycle of poverty, whether it's things like weatherization or housing affordability support, or other things like your educational programs to eventually break those cycles. So with that, I'll just kind of give a plug to a reminder to mute yourself if you're not speaking. And then, kind of waiting on that, then we'll turn it over to Athens Land Trust and to Tawana to tell us about the work that Athens Land Trust does, which is a ton. Just like Action and all these other organizations, y'all are doing so much work. And so to give us a little snapshot of some of the work that Athens Land Trust does to impact affordable housing and clean energy in Athens. But Tawana, I will turn it over to you now. And thanks,
Bailey. Thank you, Bailey. I'm very happy to share today. I am Tawana Maddox, known as Dr. T in the community. And Dr. T. We are doing a lot of great things at Athens Land Trust, and we are a community land trust. We are governed by a board of residents, community members, and public representatives. So we take a holistic approach to our work in affordable housing, and we're being good stewards of the land in general. And so we have several divisions to help us get all of this work done. And in each one of these divisions, we have also been very intentional about having youth, building our youth in our community. So they are getting not only specialized training in the areas that I'll speak about, but also we are making sure that we promote employability skills, not only specialized skills, but also transferable skills for any job in the future, and also life skills. Affordable housing is what we are mostly known for, probably, and we make sure that we create homes, rehab homes that are permanently affordable for our residents, and also for generations to come, as that they can pass their homes on to the next generation. The program is funded, our affordable home program is funded through CDBG and the Home Grant. I am the Director of Community Education and Empowerment, so I'm happy to oversee our housing counseling, our youth programs as a whole, and our neighborhood revitalization program within the West Broad area. We are a HUD certified agency. We have a HUD certified counselor who works with anyone within the community, Northeast Georgia community at large, to provide one-to-one counseling, as well as presents a home buyer education course that prepares people who are interested in purchasing a home from beginning to end on what the steps will be, what they can look forward to, so that they can prepare and understand what the process is, and not only getting that home, but also how to retain and keep that home. And so that's a big part of what we do in our counseling, one-to-one counseling on home retention for people who may be forcing forbearance, foreclosure, or who may be finding themselves anticipating that they are not going to be able to maintain their mortgages. And most recently, Melinda spoke about the CARES money. So we are an agency that have also in our counseling agency department, we are also supporting the community who have been impacted financially by COVID. So we have a lot going on in that department, and we're very happy to serve our community. Under that area, we have the young urban builders. And so they are learning construction skills and also helping to rehab in the West Broad area. And they help with the project that I will be talking about shortly. Next, we have our conservation department. And so that area works with landowners, and they have protected over 19,000 acres of land through conservation easements and a lot of other technical things I can't define, but they are really protecting and working with families, farmland, with forests, wetlands, and also with neighborhoods, open space. So they work to protect those lands. And in tandem with our community agriculture team, they also work with minority farmers to conduct outreach and educational services to ensure that we have an outlet for more farmers, minority farmers, to have a place to learn and grow in that area. And then we also have, and so within that area, we have our young conservation stewards. And then our last area, and then within the community agriculture, we have our young urban farmers. So we have those three youth areas, but today I'll be focusing more on the young urban builders through a project that we were able to work with the Athens-Clarke County Sustainability Office. We were awarded a grant through the Southeastern Directors Network to rehab and work with homes and to work towards improving the energy burden of homes in the West Broad area of Athens, Georgia. And so working with that, our main objectives was one, yes, we wanted to make sure that we help residents by helping them to doing things to help them to lower their energy burdens. So we had water projects, plumbing, and we thought that we would be able to go in and work with replacing with low flush toilets and put in shower heads. And we found quickly that before, and I think Alice may have spoke to this, but before we could get to actually doing some of those things, that we had to first do some structural work. We had to make sure, sometimes the floor, the flooring was bad. So, when doing these types of projects, we learned that it's very important to account for the structural issues that may need to be taken care of before you get to the actual energy burden work, if we're looking for longevity. And so we were able to get 16 homes done. And then our goal was 21, but because of some of the expenses necessary to build up other homes, it took away from, we were not able to meet that entire goal of 21. We also looked at, had 21 homes to receive energy audits. And so they had blow door tests, and our YUBs, our young urban builders, were able to learn how to do that and to work alongside them in doing that. And with that, we received audits. And through those audits, those energy audits, we were able to prioritize the homes that who were most hazard or needed the most work. And so we chose 21 homes, and within those homes, some of those homes received heating and air. Some of those received, it might have been storm windows. There were a variety of things. Some received insulation. It depended on the home and the condition of the homes. And some of the same things we found is that, some homes we were not able to get to the installation because there were some other things that needed to be done that was well out of our range for us to be able to do it within the grant. And then the last thing we looked at was trees and hazardous trees, and all of these things came from community meetings. A big part of this grant was before it was even written, there were several community meetings within the neighborhood where the residents, they stated, these are the things that we are most concerned about. And so based on that, the grant, the grant was written in that direction. And so in the neighborhood, there are a lot of older trees, a lot of water oak trees. I'm learning about trees now, as we say. And so they were very concerned about a number of trees, and their thing was cut all the trees down. We don't want any trees at all. And so we had planned to rebuild trees through our Young Urban Conservationists and so program, and they were able to plant 10 new trees, but it was difficult because of the fear of some of the older trees in the neighborhood, as well as the houses. A lot of the houses are older houses. They were built in 1910 to 1950. We might be on the third generation of living in those homes, and some of a lot of the upkeep hasn't been done. So before, sorry about that, muted myself. Before we can get to the energy burden work, the structural, there needs to be some type of structural assessment done to ensure that we're doing the best that we can. Also, another thing that was touched upon that a resident brought to my attention was her health. And I heard Alex talked about that as well. Doing this type of work is very important, especially in a neighborhood like West Broad, where you have a lot of older residents who have asthma. I have chronic bronchitis, and I have a chronic, illness, and I have to be careful about air and moisture. And so to think about older people having to live in those type of conditions without, support, because many times they can't afford it. Many times they can't even afford, their utility bills. They having to decide whether they want to get their medicine or whether they want to pay the Georgia Power bill. But maybe if we were to, put more money and more effort in low income areas, especially with our elderly, to make sure that we can mediate some of these things by doing more of the energy work, but along with structural work, we could find better health and savings in those areas as well. So it's at this point we are finishing the project in terms of the work getting done. The next step is now to look at the data, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you all eventually, to see, based on the work that we've done, how well has it worked for our residents. We were also able to do LED retrofit projects in 21 of our homes, and another partner is the Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, GIFL, and they also participated in this project, and we were able to work with 2 churches to provide, with one of them who was really in need of centralized heating and air, and also a retro LED retro project, and then a larger church with the LED retro light with LEDs. So we're looking forward to seeing that data and the savings that it actually has, in a few more months, enough time for us to be able to realize that. The last piece of this was it had to do with equity. So training for our city staff, which is coming up, as well as throughout this process, making sure that people from the city worked with our residents every step of the way. So that we've had community meetings where city leaders, as well as the Office of Sustainability, Andrew Saunders was there, and Mike now, very, very visible. Our commissioner for this district, very visible. So that was very important for the people in the community to even want to hear about energy burden and what that means and how they can do better. So building those connections and doing with and not doing for, I think that's one of the biggest lessons that was learned. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tawana. I was saying to Mike earlier how there's so much that Athens Land Trust does. I feel like we could give you like a 3-hour presentation and you could fill it at least. So thank you for highlighting that work and highlighting that Westbrook project especially. We appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over at this point to Megan, and we're going to kind of jump into a Q&A and open it up. I'll give one last reminder to mute your mics. It might be me, actually. I keep saying that while I'm talking, so maybe something's happening with me. But if not, please mute your mics while you're not talking, but feel free to unmute in the Q&A, and I'll just let Megan tee this up a little bit more.
All right, thanks, Bailey. So this is a list of initial questions that we put together to get the conversation starting. We'll go ahead and open the floor up to all participants as we start to dig through this. And we really do want this to be a conversation. So please do jump in as it makes sense to do so. So the first one I wanted to ask our panelists today is, what are the effects of COVID-19 that you're seeing on your communities right now?
Margot, I think you could probably take this one the best from what you're seeing in Athens-Clarke.
Yes. The COVID pandemic has really hit everyone, every county pretty hard, but with Clarke County, with the unemployment rate, and majority of the jobs were restaurants. Back when COVID first hit, we were having a major increase in people who are working those restaurant type jobs with minimum wage income. And so, of course, they're already underemployed to begin with. So then when the pandemic hit, that just, exacerbated the situation for them all. So we've seen a significant increase in calls needing rent, utility, and mortgage assistance, as well as employment support for the area. We received CARES funding, CSBG CARES, through Community Service Block Grants, what CSBG stands for. But then we also received Athens-Clarke County CARES funding to help provide assistance for those that are needing the service with housing. And so we have a county coordinator for Clarke County, but because of the significant increase, we've had to pull in some of our other county coordinators to try to help, just keep up with the demands of the people. So yeah, that's a little bit of information I can have.
That's certainly a lot of information. Thank you for sharing.
I think something else that we're seeing too is the need with the individuals who come in, especially to see our community services county coordinators in all of our counties, but particularly Athens-Clarke. There is a need to help them with employment and help them get over not only the immediate financial crisis, which again, as Margot said, was rent, mortgage, utility costs, literally food. They are in much greater need of food. And in addition to that, we're trying to work with individuals to take them and prepare them for other jobs, whether it's through training or employment counseling, or serving as a reference to help them find employers who are hiring. And if I had to add anything about action, I'd have to say that is one of the greatest things that we do and try to do the most is to really integrate our services. And it's not to operate any one program in a vacuum, but it's to have someone who's able to go into a community services office and be hooked into the weatherization department. They are very trained to take applications and counsel them to a certain degree, and then connect them with our other individuals. Everyone's issue is not, well, I can't say everyone, but most people don't just have one basic issue and that's it, and it's going to solve it for the rest of their lives. And so we try to take them forward. Margot mentioned something just a little while ago about how we will follow energy bills. And I think Stephanie could talk about this after weatherization services. We follow their budget. They help them set up a budget. They follow to make sure that the bills are going down to show the cost savings. So if I had to add anything, it'd be about the integration of services and try to look at someone's whole issues. And as we say, take it. Now, how do you eat an elephant? One step or one bite at a time. So we try to take it and tackle it that way to get them on their feet and moving forward. And I think it was Alex who touched on the affordability of housing. Well, can we take them past that current crisis of losing their job and having just to pay that one energy bill, all the way through to improving their career and their economic position where they can afford their housing or afford better housing?
I'll add that what we've seen on our side is that there is an increased demand on the services of our agencies and the staffing, the requirements for these emergency services. So they're not only continuing to provide normal program services, they're taking on this extra, emergency funding, this CARES funding, and we had some other indigenous funding. And so, they're being stressed to max capacity or over as far as just the level of service that's being provided. But what we're also hearing from the community is, you already had unstable households financially that if it weren't for the moratorium on rent, they would have already been evicted. Their water bills, their power bills, everything's going up because they're not leaving the home and going to work and their kids were not going to school. So bills that might have been, they were high for them, but they were a little bit more, level, have now increased significantly because you've got a full household all the time. So we're seeing both sides, that you've got these major stressors on the agencies because they're doing a phenomenal job of providing all of this service. But then you've got already stressed households and lower income individuals that are stressed even higher. So, I'm proud of what we're trying to do, and I'm proud of the collaboration and efforts of the community agencies in trying to help overcome this pandemic and the emergency services that are being provided for that. We certainly appreciate all of our partners in that effort.
And to dovetail on what Melinda just said, was that a lot of these individuals can't go to work because they have their children at home, and they're not. And so whether they've lost their jobs or have been laid off, sometimes it's not necessarily the issue. It's that they cannot go to work, or they cannot afford or even have available childcare to be able to go to work. So it's this vicious cycle that's going on with some individuals.
That because we have one counselor, and and so now we just added an administrative assistant to assist us with some of the paperwork, because we're seeing 90 to 100 people by phone and through dropping off applications a week, and we're having to advocate more. So our housing counselor, not only the steps he takes for our regular counseling, but now he's trying to help the people who come through think about long term, what's going to happen next, and not just put a band-aid on the situation with a bill being paid for this month. And so that's been very very challenging. But also calling landlords and making deals, because sometimes some of the expenses, the assets expenses that are tacked on at the end, you know, the people could make it if they didn't have those extra charges. So having to be an advocate as well. And so, you know, we're seeing some of the same things, and definitely the child care issue.
Mhm.
Thanks, everybody. So the next question I have up here, I'm going to rephrase it just a little bit to ask. So you guys are really working on the ground, seeing the challenges that people are facing head on. And obviously the challenges aren't limited to just energy efficiency or clean energy. There are myriad challenges. When you hear people talking about clean energy and housing, like what do you want people to know to help them just better understand the complexity of moving clean energy forward in housing? Like what are the barriers and what are the pathways that you think are the best opportunities?
I think limited funding to provide services to low to moderate income households, especially your senior homeowners whose income is very, very restricted. It's on a very tight budget. And, you know, so limited income or limited finances to go in and do major rehab projects for these households. I mean, you could, in some of these houses, you could go in and easily find $25,000 worth of rehab work that needs to be done. And that's would incorporate the energy efficiency necessities, but that's just household, you know, rehab that needs to be done. So, you know, funding is always going to be, the limitation of funding is always going to be a huge barrier in helping people to get to that energy efficiency level in their homes to where they actually are benefiting financially from that savings.
Can I ask a question? Melinda, would you, I just was looking at it says financial policy and other, I mean, are there policy regulations that add to those costs? I mean, not that, you know, I'm certainly, I know regulations and things are necessary. I'm just wondering if you're aware of any alternatives to existing regulations or ways of getting at the same the same end that could reduce some of those costs?
Well, you know, for federal funding, the layers, the higher number or the higher total of rehab that you provide, it adds that layer. So when you are, you know, $5,000 or below, then it does not trigger a lot of the lead-based paint requirements, the asbestos requirements. You start hitting that $5,000 and above, then you really start. You have to have contractors come in, do the lead-based paint testing. Then you have to do clearance. If it does test positive, you've got to go through, pay for someone to come test for the asbestos and then have that cleaned if it tests positive. So the higher, you know, you go in that rehab assistance, it starts triggering those more expensive service needs as far as contractors. And where home is concerned, if you were to use our home investment program funding, you can't just go in and determine that we're going to do $5,000 worth of work. The home restrictions actually say that you must fix everything that needs to be rehabbed in that home, period. So you have to go in for a rehab with home funding and get everything up to code. So once again, you're looking at potentially $25,000 to $30,000 a house in a lot of circumstances. So, you know, for federal funding, there are major barriers, and you know that the funding that we get, it only goes so far. And we're also trying to, you know, do economic development funding and public services funding. So, you know, there's only so much of the pie that we can make available. And it goes very quickly, and it goes quickly every year. But I would assume that SPLOST funding potentially would have a lot more flexibility in that. And general funds from the county would possibly, I don't know of any federal funding that doesn't trigger the same types of regulations that we deal with.
Amy, I really appreciated that question. And Melinda, you spoke to federal requirements. Are there any local requirements or barriers or local policy opportunities? I know we touched on this briefly last time we talked last week. But are there any, it can just be even like spitballing here. Just are there any local opportunities within policy that you guys see as things that might be helpful?
I know
just a pitch for your platform for whatever you're running for at a local.
I know that the commission. I know that the commission, mayor and commission have requested that planning look at ordinances on the books to try to relieve a lot of the issues that decrease the ability to create affordable housing. And I'm sure that a lot of what you're talking about would be incorporated in those zoning and planning policy changes. But other than that, not right off the top of my head, no.
No worries, no worries.
Is community, I don't know if this is right, I don't know how to put this. I don't know if it's community solar or having like, within neighborhoods, within blocks, having kind of solar farms or whatever. Is that a possibility in Athens-Clarke County, or is that primarily controlled by the utility company? So, because I remember way back with Solarize Athens 1.0, kind of looking at some of this, and like some of the EMCs allowed that, but I don't think Georgia Power did. I mean, in terms of some of these neighborhoods, rather than trying to go in and retrofit each of these houses to actually, or to pay for them, if we could have these centralized solar that feeds a whole block or a neighborhood, I mean, that might be, honestly, whatever neighborhood you're in, I don't think it has to be in, an affordable neighborhood, any neighborhood. It seems like that's a better approach to providing it than each individual homeowner. But
what you're speaking to, Amy, is microgrids that have been developed in some places, and there are state laws. A lot of, you can imagine how much Georgia Power had to do with the writing of the laws related to solar. There are state laws that limit when and where and how much solar you can put in a location. For example, you can't put solar. If you can put solar on your property and property immediately adjacent to you, provided you own it. So if you have multiple tracks that adjoin, you can produce power for those tracks for you, but you can't produce power for somebody else. Now, there is some provisions for private firms to step in and do some, I think they're called SEPAs. It's a energy procurement program through a third party, and that does provide some flexibility through that program, but it's still infancy for all of this to happen, and it's a little bit of a tightrope to walk through what you can get or what you can't. I think that's some of what long term the PSA has to address, is in order to go. The most recent thing that did happen is apparently Emory was able to put in a microgrid for Emory, and but it was for all properties it owned. So they were in a pretty powerful position to be able to generate a microgrid for their properties. Mm-hmm. But we're really talking about some things that have more impact at the state level, where they have to change some of their policies in order for this to move at that kind of scale. And it is something that we need to work for and partner with places like Georgia Power so that they are with us. I think that once they start realizing and can see a way that they can continue to be, they've invested a lot in their infrastructure. So ways that they aren't being put out of business, then we can get them involved in it as well, and then we'll start seeing some movement. So that's state policy level.
Mike is right that a lot of that is at the state level, and that community solar is really hard to make happen legally in Georgia. I think Megan can add to that a little bit. But just a quick check on the acronyms. Mike mentioned the PSA, and I think we talked about this probably, and I actually wasn't able to attend, but I'm sure it was covered in the Energy Systems and Grid Policy education session. But what I think you meant to refer to is the Public Service Commission, the PSC. So the PSC does all the regulation of Georgia Power and electric utilities across the state. And so there's a really complex regulatory system there that dictates that. And so it's long-term state level stuff.
And you're right. It is PSC, and I'm the one who always fusses about people using abbreviations, and then I come up and I'm the first one to do it. So apologies.
Made a concerted effort not to do that, to make sure I spoke it all out. I did want to add something. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, then I did it. So
now, what I did want to add, though, is a lot of communities do concentration programs as far as it consolidates numerous years of different types of funding into a revitalization program for specific neighborhoods, designated as or that meet what we call the area benefit, low to moderate income, where over 51% of the area it meets that HUD definition of low to moderate income. So they have a huge concentration of funding over numerous years, 5 to 10 years, for a revitalization project. And essentially, every dime they can get goes into that neighborhood, and they rehab and rebuild every house in that area. And so, I mean, that is something that the county could consider. Now, like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years, and you really do have to effectively concentrate every bit of funding that you can get your hands on toward that type of a project. But you could go neighborhood to neighborhood with those types of revitalization projects and just do a major overhaul for everyone. And there's no displacement. It might be temporary displacement, but that would be in services as far as the funding to temporarily house someone while their house is being rehabbed. That would be a part of the service. So they wouldn't just be thrown out of their house. And once their house is finished, they're able to, of course, go right back in. So, I mean, that's something to be considered.
Yeah, it just seems like in terms of our plan, for how we're going to get to 100% renewable, that kind of strategy and community solar, that in order to get into some of our neighborhoods, with lower income, that's the only way that it's really going to happen. I mean, it's the most important thing probably for us to really be focused on to try to make happen. So I'm sure that'll come up again, I guess, but.
Yeah. Well, and you also have the water issue. Mike and I were talking about that the other day, as far as, you've got a lot of people with very high water bills because they've got old pipes that are leaking. They can't afford to replace them. So it's not just the household itself, the house. So you are talking that infrastructure attached to it as well can cause some serious energy efficiency issues.
Yeah, this may be a little sidetrack to what we were talking about, and I'm going to ask Stephanie Nesbitt to speak more to this. But what they see when they do go out to weatherize many homes, and the people who really need the assistance, there's so much work that needs to be done on those homes before anything can actually even be started to weatherize it. Going back to, I think it was Alex's slides, and he was showing all the different steps before you could add solar. Well, sometimes they're dealing with holes in the roof, holes in the floor, things that are just so massive that need to be done primarily before you even go to this next step. Stephanie, can you hear me? Are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
You want to speak to that? Because I know that's been a topic that we've talked about for years now, and how much more money could be used per home that Melinda was alluding to. I think it was Melinda alluding to. Can you take that one, Stephanie?
Yeah, we come across a lot of houses that, I mean, they need a roof, so it would interfere with doing weatherization, or they have a plumbing leak, or the big one, they have a plumbing leak from a toilet. So we can't go in and weatherize the home. They will have to be deferred until they can get it done. Now we do give them other agencies they can call in that area to help them get the work done, but sometimes we just have to walk away.
And that's the kicker. Then we see the things such as the mold issues and the asthma issues and those types of things that are being caused by these other greater things. I'll never forget Chip Stone saying that there was a home years ago that it was a 90-something-year-old woman whose 70-something-year-old daughter was taking care of her. And there were so many holes in the roof that when it rained, he literally had to move her hospital bed around the house to get her out of the rain. And that's probably an extreme, but there's nothing that at this point with the funding that we have that we could attempt to do any type of repairs or issues ourselves, even though we beg to be able to do it. So those are extreme barriers, but we see it not every single day, but we see it all too often.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I believe that could be echoed by the work Tawana was doing in the West Rome project. She encountered that on a routine basis as well. I love the story about the elderly person who was having difficulty, that same difficulty, her kitchen floor was falling in. Mm-hmm. She went out herself, I believe, and Tawana, you can tell it better than I can if she's still on. But,
she had to hop off.
I believe she's in her 70s, and she went out and bought a piece of lumber from Lowe's and nailed it down herself, and that's how she was walking across her kitchen floor, where she created kind of a bridge across it because her floor was too unstable.
Yeah. Tawana had to hop off, Mike. But yeah, these problems this is really good to hear about, to gain perspective on the like incredible amount of layers that we need to allow clean energy to benefit everyone. I am monitoring the chat for questions for those who are on the phone oh, there's another one. Well, I was going to call out Michael's question about what kind of time frame is involved in consolidating funds, but it looks like Melinda just typed an answer to that. Melinda, I appreciate the effort you went into answering that.
Yeah, that's what I was over here doing. If you saw me, looked like I was writing and I was turning. I was working on my calculator, trying to do the math very quickly.
Do you want to speak to that real quick about consolidating funds and the timeline?
Yeah, what Mary Songster asked is what kind of time frame is involved in consolidating funds, and essentially what I was saying is it's truly dependent upon the amount of funds available. So what I did was kind of used an example based on current CDBG funding for my department. So if we were to, if we get approximately 1.4 million annually, and you take out the public services and the administration funds that automatically come out, you would have approximately $910,000 annually that could go toward neighborhood revitalization activities alone. So if you did it over 5 years, you're looking at a little over $4 million in a 5-year time frame. So, remember, CDBG, we're entitlement, but we aren't guaranteed that same amount every year. So the only thing that you could possibly do is say that, with the exception of the public services and the administration funding, if we determined that we were going to allocate every bit of the remaining funding that we have available toward those revitalization activities, you could possibly look at anywhere from $850,000 to $900,000 annually toward that effort. There are other things that could be done. I don't know. We do have SPLOST. We did get an affordable housing grant award from SPLOST funding for affordable housing activities. That's I believe it's the remaining $5 million that wasn't dedicated specifically to the North Downtown Revitalization Program that could possibly go towards something like this. But to just in a nutshell, it really boils down to how much funding you can pull together and where it's going to come from. I hope I answered that question.
That's good. I have a question that's a little. Oh, hi, Michael. Did you want to pipe up there?
Melinda, how much would that change what HCD currently does? Like, is this a large pivot, or is the money typically going towards activities like that, and it would just be clarifying the focus?
It would be a huge pivot if we removed all economic development funding that we currently provide for small business entrepreneurs and micro enterprise activities. So it would eliminate the funding for economic development activities altogether. But as far as the affordable housing activities, Land Trust, Athens Land Trust receives a decent amount of funding to support new construction activities. And that's the other thing is we could put our funding, to support new construction activities, but I was just using our funding as an example. You can't do new construction with CDBG activities. You can use it to support new construction activities with home. Home is what would fund new construction activities, and the CDBG funding would support operations for those types of activities. See, you get in these federal regs, and it just gets messy. It gets messy. It gets ugly. You wouldn't be able to do new construction. You could do rehab. You could do a lot of major rehab and you could do almost reconstruction, but you just couldn't do new construction activities with CDBG. It would be a huge pivot from what we're doing, though, because essentially what we would likely do is rather than fund agencies individually like we do now, we would do internally. That work would come from internal then. We would do RFPs. We would hire our own contractors to go out and do those types of major activities. So it would be a hit to our nonprofits and the services they provide.
Thanks, Melinda. I have a question. It's kind of a broad one, but I scribbled it down just to kind of get your thoughts. And maybe it's the last question. I'm not sure. Megan's the key timekeeper here. But so for our panelists, what's your vision for a clean and affordable future for Athens in 2035 and 2050? I know that part of what we've talked about here is that the short term and the immediate and the urgency is really what we see on a day-to-day basis. But if we could get some insight into the long-term vision that you guys see for in Athens with affordable housing and clean energy for all, would love to hear that. No pressure.
Are you asking panelists or just everybody?
Panelists primarily, but
ultimately, I would love to see major revitalization take place all through Athens-Clarke County so that no matter what neighborhood you drive through, everybody has a nice, habitable, clean, safe, energy efficient home. The quality of life is improved for everybody in Athens-Clarke County. And, you're never going to have, you're always going to have some income disparity, but if people's smaller homes are still clean and habitable and energy efficient, they're living a good, happy, healthy, robust life. And that's what I would like to see the ultimate outcome be for Athens-Clarke County.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on that? Long-term success and what that looks like? Okay. And any other questions from the CAB? What you guys want to know from these folks? I know that we have plenty of opportunities to chat with them more since they've been joining these meetings. So.
Well, I know I've talked a lot, but I would just like to once again reiterate how much we HCD appreciate all of the hard work and effort that our agencies do for this community, for our low to moderate income, households and individuals. There's a lot of need out there, and they are boots on the ground working hard to get those services out there to those in need. So we appreciate that, and we're proud to be partners with everybody.
Thanks, Melinda.
All right. Is there any, if there's no more input, we can kind of wrap up and before you jump into that, Bailey, if I can mention, and Megan, if I can mention that all of this has been incredible information. I want to thank the panelists for taking time and preparing. Y'all, that was great. It really is helpful. This information is going to be very powerful and helpful in what we do to develop questions and present questions to our stakeholders. So that's going to be very important. This information helps frame that out. And it also provides some very foundational information and helps set the direction for how the plan will develop. So as we go forward and the plan begins to come out, those are things we want to see, and those are things we want to expand on as we have opportunities. So that's where we can continue this dialogue and discussion. So if you have additional information you'd like to share, then please, and if you know of anybody who can, if we have a sugar daddy who can fund some of this stuff, y'all let us know. We'll go after it. So, and with that, I will turn this back over to Megan and to Bailey.
Thanks, Mike. I just personally want to reiterate how informative this has been. All the conversations that we've had with you guys so far in our prep call last week, as well as today, are really helping us as the planners gain so much insight into the actual needs of the community, and I'll speak for the CAB as well, to really understand even closer the community that we're trying to help here. All of this is really informative to make sure that we're staying, not just planning and thinking through that in a bubble. So thank you. And Megan, I will let you wrap us up here and flag that you have the gray screen issue on your slide again. So maybe like go back one and then forward one or something like that. It'll probably clear up, maybe. It seems to be like a blemish that disappears.
Yeah, it's annoying. But I think we can read most of what's up here. Well, I can read it out loud at minimum. So quick recap of what we've done today was walk through the October CAB meeting and stakeholder engagement process, look ahead, and learned a lot from our really fantastic guest speakers today. And I really can't thank y'all enough for joining. I know I learned a lot and appreciated the conversation. So we'll be sending out for your information only, no action required on your part, just the draft of the community survey and our final stakeholder lists that I teased out earlier in the presentation, along with the description of charrettes and proposed invitees. So there will be some action needed on your part, which is helping us establish which CAB members will be participating in which charrettes versus the option of also participating in a community meeting at a later date. So that will be coming your way along with the draft info only materials we reference. So we do have a communications update from Maggie. Maggie can jump in.
Hey, y'all, thank you so much for all this information today. It was really helpful. And like Megan said, I also learned a lot as well. And And so following up with these meetings moving forward, I will personally be reaching out to each member of the CAB in a phone call so that we can just, I apologize, so that we can just talk over kind of what you're gaining from the meetings and if you have any insights. So we will start we'll start doing that in the future. And one more thing I also wanted to mention as well is that we have a lot of the past recorded meetings live on our website, and I'm posting the link right now. You can find it on our Office of Sustainability page. So these includes past meeting as well as educational series. So if at any point you would like to review the material, it will all be on this part of the website right here. And you're welcome to view through the rest of the other portion of the websites too if you'd like any more information. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Maggie. Right, and then the final two bullets we've got upcoming, those will be revised based on the conversation we had earlier. We're going to combine the originally scheduled for December 9th greenscaping education session with our December CAB meeting. So both of those will take place on December 16th within our regular 2 to 4 p.m. block of time. So with that, I'll just ask quickly if anyone has any questions before we wrap up for the day.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Good meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you to everyone. We'll be in touch soon. Have a great Thanksgiving holiday, and we'll be in touch shortly. And see you next month. Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
A participant has left the meeting. Has left the meeting.
Yes.
You
One thing that might help if you
has left the meeting.